There's 800 verses roughly in Bhagavad Gita, and they're all equally important. Um, this one is particularly important because of the title of the class today about peace. It's considered to be, it's called the peace formula, which I think is pretty much important today. And I think I just heard recently that 1 in every 4 countries is undergoing civil unrest at the moment. So that's like very apparent civil unrest. But there probably is a lot of unrest even in the countries which aren't in that category. Because it seems to be something which is quite difficult to get hold of. I mean, they say that probably the biggest difficulty in today's world, the biggest disease will be a disease of the mind, which, or depression, or so many different ailments which are there, which indicate that people are not actually at peace. And so therefore, how can we get peace in this situation? So I wanted to turn to the Bhagavad Gita and the purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Let's see his picture there, just over the fireplace there. Srila Prabhupada made a huge endeavor to try to bring this Bhagavad Gita to the attention of millions and millions and millions of people. Even, for instance, I know in America at the moment there's it's a club called the Motel Gita, and what they've done is that they've put Bhagavad Gita in practically nearly every hotel in the US, and it's basically the idea to get this very, very powerful message over to people so that they actually can live peacefully in this world. Because it is a real art, it's a real formula in that sense, but it is a spiritual development how people actually can live at peace here. One of the reasons for that is, of course, is that we're surrounded by things which are not very peaceful. Like, for instance, there's birth, there's death, disease, old age. These are things which are constantly affecting us. As the older you get, the last 3, disease, old age, and death, start to become very prominent. Because when you're young, you don't think about it as much, it just doesn't enter into the equation. You're almost, you could say, impregnable. Things are great, well, not always, of course, as you know, but still, you have more facility to think that this temporary situation here in this world will last for a lot longer than it actually does. But when you get older, you start to think, start looking at what year is it now? Oh my God, how long more do I have? So you start looking at it from the other end, and what I have to do at that time. And then, of course, little pleasantries like disease start to pop up as well, and then what to speak of old age, you're not able to do the same amount of activities as you used to be able to do, and your strength is starting to diminish and diminish and diminish. Well, that's the physical strength anyway. But that is why that the message from the Bhagavad Gita is so important, because what it does is it gives us information on our real selves, which is not the material body. Because the material body is prone to those things. It ultimately is only a temporary situation. So, as we study Bhagavad Gita, which is written 5,000 years ago, but according to the Bhagavad Gita itself, it's been in existence in human society for 120 million years. That's according to the Bhagavad Gita itself. So that's quite a long time. But it's an eternal religious scripture. And that's one of the beauties of the Vedic scriptures, because it's not so limiting as regards time, or we came here 2,000 years ago, or 4,000 years ago, or 6,000 years ago, the earth was built this time, or millions trillions or billions, and they start going into different figures. But actually, the Vedic scripture explain about this the most incredible universal system, not only system, but systems imaginable. You know, it actually explains that there is other galaxies, other worlds, other universes which are vastly different than this universe. And it actually stands to reason. I mean, it doesn't, if you look at the universe, it's hard to imagine that this is the only place where there's life going on, you know? It's totally illogical to expect that, you know? But Bhagavad Gita does give this, and the whole Vedic scriptures give information on much greater levels of knowledge and of understanding. With this in mind, I'd like to actually read one of the verses from Bhagavad Gita, 529. I'm going to read it in Sanskrit first of all, and then I'll read English, and then I'll read a translation by Srila Prabhupada, and then I'll do some comments, and then we can have some questions or some discussion as well. If anyone wants to ask anything about what we'll be discussing. Bhaktaram yagatapasham sarvamokloka maheshwaram suriram sarvabhutanam gyatfamam shantam richchati. And translation. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. And then the purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The person, by the way, who's speaking here is Krishna. Krishna is a name for the most attractive personality, or it's in kind of common parlance, it's God, you know. And this is Krishna explaining what the reality of the situation is, who Krishna is, who God is, and who we are in relation to God. Because he's the person who created this whole situation, so he's the person we should go to when we want to get information on what it's about. So Krishna is like that. So this is what he's doing here. It's not as if Krishna just dropped us here without any information about what's the whole reason for this thing happening. In fact, you find a whole literatures, mass literatures of atheistic literatures explaining that there's no God, there's nothing that exists, you know, and basically that it's full of misinformation. But there is a qualification for understanding and for getting to know what God is saying, and that is what the whole Krishna consciousness movement, Srila Prabhupada came, and we see all the different sages and saints here. This is what they have come to do. They have come to give this information on behalf of Krishna. Krishna is speaking himself in Bhagavad Gita, and they are explaining further for us, so that we can become qualified to get this information, because there is a qualification necessary. I mean, if you look over to Trinity over there, you have so many professors and so on. It's not that somebody just walked in off the street and started saying, "Okay, I'm a professor, I'm going to start telling you about everything." That's not the way to go. You have to become qualified. So if to understand things on the material plane, like physics, chemistry, science, all those things, these are material sciences, you have to undergo so much training and to become so qualified. But actually to understand even much, much, much greater than that, which is God, who's the source of all physics, chemistry, and all those things, you also have to become qualified. Actually, much more qualified. But the thing is that the qualification isn't just you don't just do exams and you just write out papers, and you kind of work at all that you can understand, how to regurgitate almost what you've been told and whatever. I'm not trying to denounce that by any means, but I'm just saying that it's a different type of science, but to become qualified to understand God, we have to develop a particular quality. Anyone can you tell me what that quality might be? What? Yeah, what type of quality? Surrender's good, devotion's good, yes. Love is also good. Kindness, yes. These are all good ones.
Eagerness to learn.
The one that I'm looking for is
eagerness to learn.
Eagerness to learn. Yeah, that's called lolium. Yeah, so there's the word that you really want to know. That's very essential. You really want to know who God is. But the one I'm looking for at the moment is see? The one I'm looking for at the moment is humility. Because we have to understand our position in relation to God. And most of the other sciences will speak about us becoming learned, very big personalities. We know this and this and this. But in spiritual science, it actually almost goes in the opposite direction. We have to get tinier and tinier and tinier and tinier and tinier. And then realize that there is a greater force than us who knows what's happening. And then we have to then surrender to that. Someone mentioned surrender. And then that force will actually give us the understanding by which we can go back to God. And it explains the whole reason why we're here in the first place. What are we doing here? What is the reason of that being here? I mean, it's so, random, you could say. But actually, it is so detailed of a reason, and that we can understand that information when we get closer and closer to God. So now I'm just going to read Srila Prabhupada's purport on this verse, and I'm going to stop at a couple of points. And so Prabhupada says, the conditioned souls, within the clutches of the illusory energy, are all anxious to attain peace in the material world. But they do not know the formula for peace, which is explained in this part of the Bhagavad Gita. The greatest peace formula is simply this: Lord Krishna, or God, is the beneficiary in all human activities. Men should offer everything to the transcendental service of the Lord, because he is the proprietor of all planets and the demigods thereon. No one is greater than he. He is greater than the greatest of the demigods, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. In the Vedas, Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6-7, the Supreme Lord is described as Tamishvaranam Paramam Maheshwaram. Under the spell of illusion, living entities are trying to be lords of all they survey, but actually they are dominated by the material energy of the Lord. So that is the first anomaly that's there. Living entities are trying, that's us. We're the what's it called, the Tatasta Shakti, the minute servants of God. But we are trying to take on the position of God. Does that make any sense to anybody? How does that sound? Is everyone here trying to be God?
No, not really.
The answer to that question is yes.
Are you trying to be supreme or not?
Yeah, we're trying. I mean, we're not very good at it. And the reason we're not very good at it is because we're not God. We don't understand what our position is in relation to God. But this planet is a place where we're given an opportunity to try to act out that dream. But the problem is, when you have a couple of billion, 6-7 billion people trying to be God, you're going to have conflict, right? Because there's only one God, I'm God, no, you're God, no, I'm God, no. And hence you have a lot of quarrels going on. This is my land, what are you doing in my land? What did you do here? Don't come into my country. This is my country. It's not yours, it's mine. But whereas somebody has probably been around for 60, 70 years and suddenly they have this great proprietorship. Of course, I think, I don't know the whole social history of it, but I could give an example in America before civilization came. Before it came, people just lived very naturally on the land in that sense. And nobody owned anything. They probably moved from one place to the next to another place, when they needed things. But there was no ownership. There was no solicitors. Sorry to say solicitors. But we didn't have to divide up the land and get a proprietary deed over some land, and that's mine, no one else's. And in fact, when you see the way the whole nationhoods have gone on, it's just somebody who come in and grabbed and stole and raped and pillaged a piece of land, and then they settle down, and then they call themselves civilized. That's generally how it happens, But this is the first disease in human society. Is this tendency to want I, me, mine, I, me, no. It is me, it is mine, it is mine. Because what that does, it just blocks out God, you know. Because everything belongs to God. We're only here for a little while, and we're allowed a certain amount of things to use. And there's a verse in the Ishopanishad, one of the first Upanishads, and it explains that we're only allowed to take whatever is given to us as our quota, and we should not take any more, knowing well to whom it belongs. But yet you have such a huge imbalance, really becoming clear in the world today. Massive imbalance, you know. Shani, my wife was telling me yesterday about one great multi-billionaire who has 76,000 square feet of a house or something, isn't it?
Bill Gates.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it.
Oh well, I don't think anybody did.
But anyway, was it that far? Was it?
157 million.
And it cost
Dollar
150,000.
66,000.
66,000 square feet, okay? So how much do you need, you know? How much do you need? And then there's people probably, you know, they're probably sleeping on the street. So there's a huge imbalance, and the imbalance comes about by that type of mentality. I'm not proposing a kind of a social program here, but what I am proposing is that people understand their position in relation to God, and therefore learn from God what you can use as what you need. Only take what you need. Don't take more than what you need. We have different needs. Different people have different needs. We understand that, you know, and different tendencies and whatever. But the whole point is to be happy with what we have. You know, we often hear about that, about being grateful, like, you know, gratitude with what we have. Some or other, and again I come into another difficulty in the material situation, is the whole advertising industry, you know. We all know about the advertising industry. It makes us want things that we don't really want, but we want them anyway, you know. If we kind of end up, how did I get that? How did I get that? I mean, it is a constant struggle, actually. And especially in this world today, because, you know, there's so many things that you could have, and you think, the biggest illusion is to think that we'll be happy by having those things, you know. That's actually the biggest illusion. But still, it's presented as a glamorous reality. If you have that, then you'll be happy, or you will get this wonderful boy, this wonderful girl, this wonderful house, this wonderful, you know, you'll be moving in the right circles. But yet you find that a lot of people, even in the entertainment industry, you know, all you hear is the stories of many divorces they had, and many, you know, head-wrecking situations they've been through, you know, and the whole idea of that was to so you had money or whatever, so you could be happy. But so none of these things can actually give happiness. And if there's no happiness, there's no peace. Exactly. You know, that's the reality. And this is why I'm saying is that I'm not presenting some sort of a social structure here. There is a social structure that you can take up, but mainly what I'm presenting is is philosophically to understand who we are, and then practically to live our life based on that philosophy. So we're not the Lord of all we survey. And I'll continue on with the purport. The Lord is the master of material nature, and the conditioned souls are under the stringent rules of material nature. What are the stringent rules of material nature? Anyone tell me? Birth, death, disease, and old age. They're stringent rules, you can't get around them. Unless one understands these bare facts, it is not possible to achieve peace in the world, either individually or collectively. This is the sense of Krishna consciousness. Lord Krishna is the supreme predominator, and all living entities, including the great demigods, are his subordinates. One can attain perfect peace only in complete Krishna consciousness. So can anyone again tell me why we can't attain peace if we don't know our position in relation to God? Anyone give me an answer to that? Why can we not be peaceful unless we know our relation to God? Big question. 6 marks. An extra portion of Rashad and food. That's it.
We can't surrender to him.
You can't surrender. Yes, that's one answer, because because the disease that we mentioned earlier is that to think that we're the Lord. We're the Lord of what we do. I know this. I know this. I'm this. I'm this. And what's that called? That's called the
Egoic.
ego. Yes, ahankar, vimuthatma, because that is the real basis of it. Let me just talk a little bit about the ahankar. The ahankar is called the false ego. It's this false sense of I. It is all to do with I, me, mine. I own this. My name is Joe Bloggs. I come from Ireland, and I was born at such and such a time, and I'm a man. These are all what are they called? False designations, because these are only temporary coverings of who we are. Because this body will go, it will be gone, and what's left? And this is the whole philosophical understanding. Is the whole Bhagavad Gita explains who we are. It's the soul.
I'm not this body.
I'm not this body, and I'm the spirit soul. So there's a negative and a positive. The negative means I'm not this body. This is a temporary situation. It's useful. Don't get me wrong. We have to use it very, very, very carefully, but we don't own it. Do I own my heartbeat? Am I making my heart? Am I breathing at the moment? Is that coming from me? The air coming from me? No, but it's there. We're utilizing the situation to stay alive. So it's a very subtle but complex reality that we're in. And according to Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, he says that this place is called Dukalayam Ashashvatam. It means it is full of misery, and it is temporary. It's actually misery because it is temporary. Because we're always looking for eternal happiness, but we're in miserable temporary situations. So that there's a real sense of I as well. That's who we are. We are all separate individual, and we're servant of God. That's our relationship with God. And as soon as we start that relationship, everything changes. Everything changes. Our whole vision starts to change. We start to see everything in a different light. And one of the verses in Bhagavad Gita says, Krishna talks about, for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. So then we are protected. We're protected by God because we're God's children in that sense. God is looking after us. We each have a very personal, intimate relation with God. And that's where we talked about earlier about love, kindness, all of those things. That is where that relationship is found in its maximum degree. We sometimes try to find it here in the material world, but some heartbreak, he loves me, she doesn't love me, she doesn't love me, he loves me. All different things kind of can get in the way of that. Or sometimes we've got great friendship, and then somebody kind of does something else. Oh, I thought he was my best friend, but he did this to me. Or these things can happen in the material world. And even if you absolutely love seemingly eternally, your husband and wife, then the wife dies or his husband dies, and eventually you're separated. So, but the intensity of the love though is real, It is, but we have to see where that love finds its total eternal repose, which is in God. And then if we have that relationship with God, then we can love everybody. Because we have, that is really accelerated from our heart to the maximum degree when we see God. And we see God when he's protecting us, especially, and Bhagavad Gita says it here, in the most difficult situations. Because that's another pastime in one sense that God does. Sometimes he puts us in difficult situations to see how we will, to see what we'll do. Now, one tendency if we're in a difficult situation is to say, why did God do this to me? Why was I'm such a good person, and why is he doing this? That is one tendency. But when we become a little bit more spiritually evolved, which I'm sure all of you are, then we can see that God has done this so that we can take shelter more of God, and we take shelter less of our own, our mind or intelligence or our own devices, shall we say. We will take less, because at the moment, say when we're young, healthy, whatever, you know, we can seem to do this and go drive into a car, go to America, just get the plane, we're kind of in control kind of thing. But if something happens in that program and we're in a hospital bed somewhere and we can't move, how much where's the control? You can't do anything. Yeah. So the reality is that God can put us, if He loves us, He loves us because He wants us to take shelter in Him, so that we can actually go back to God as soon as possible. We have taken a pretty wrong step by coming here, because ultimately we were eternally existing in the spiritual world, and we were full of knowledge, eternal, and full of bliss. We still are. But because we have taken that step, this hankar which I told you about before, or which Bhagavad Gita explains about, that false ego, that false sense of I, then this whole universe manifests and we're in here. So Krishna wants us back because He has a special place for everybody in His heart. We have a special relationship with Krishna that only we can fulfill. That shows us the power of individuality. Each of us has his own character, her own character, and that is found in its maximum degree in the relationship with God. So it's like a completeness, We'll talk about yin and yang and so on, but that the real completeness is with God in that sense, So maybe I could stop here. Is there any comments at this point? Anyone like to ask any questions? Or I've still got some more of the report to read.
Prabhu, I have a question.
Yeah.
Like even when I'm reading Srila Prabhupada's book,
Yeah.
it's in the beginning pages only when he mentions that he was brought down to a situation where financially, everything, he was like, he's literally broken down.
Yeah.
And he says, I guess it was because it was Krishna's way of putting
Yes.
into the path
Yes.
of, but with every person it won't happen. A person, if he breaks down, then he might break down for like, how in that moment we should, be, or anybody should.
Yeah, that's a very, very good question, because Vaishali talked about Srila Prabhupada's life, because it's a very, very interesting
Yes.
part of his life, and it's not that we already have enough difficulties without asking for difficulties.
Yes, we all agree to that.
Because we can get to know God better by difficulty often. That's probably sometimes it's one of the best ways we can learn to surrender to God. But nobody wants to ask for difficulty. Everyone wants to ask for some great time or some nice thing to happen to them, And how will we be ready? Because we have to be aware. It's kind of like a worry. I want to make advance, but I don't want it to happen too bad. And but the answer to that question though is that God will only ever give us what we're able to handle.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the answer to that. One of our great devotees was his disciple, Srila Prabhupada, his name is Bhakti Tirtha Swami, who left his body in 2005. He actually, such an exponent of that, such a very powerful, very positive individual. And that was his scientific discovery in that. Now, he personally underwent huge difficulties at the last point of his life, but he was on his deathbed, he was saying, you know what he was saying? He was saying, it doesn't get any better than this. Can you imagine? He had melanoma, and he was in great pain, and seeming great pain, and he was with his godbrother Radhanath Swami, and he turned to him and said, it doesn't get any better than this. And that was because, my understanding of that is because Krishna was there, and the whole Param was there, Srila Prabhupada was there, and they were all encouraging him. He was going through his last, most difficult hour, which we will all go through, and he was just bringing us into the next situation. And the whole of the Srimad Bhagavatam is about that. It's about all the different devotees taking shelter of Krishna. So the more that we read these books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the whole set there, it's all about great saints and sages and how they approach those different difficulties and how they succeeded. And then And if we study those books, then we live in that reality that's in those books. You know, that will become the reality, not who's going to win the next election. You know, the real spiritual dynamics are there, and we will have less of a taste for that, because whoever wins the next election, I mean, in 20 years' time, 100 years' time, 1,000 years' time, who cares? Makes no difference. But if we enter into the spiritual reality, we'll be experiencing eternal knowledge and eternal bliss. So the whole Bhagavatam is about that, is how to live in this world, in the situation that we're in the spiritual dimension, so that we never come back to the material dimension. Not that we think that everything is bad here. This is all created by God, so it's beautiful as well. But we have to learn how to use everything here in God's service, not in the service of mankind. And this perfect example of when that doesn't happen and when people are greedy and so on. You have this whole, this planet being wrecked and destroyed, and just because people want it. I mean, it's so obvious that if you extract millions and millions and millions of gallons and barrels of oil out of the earth, can you imagine somebody taking all the oils out of yourself? What are you going to be like? We still do it. We still drive. We still do all these things. It's foolishness. It's because we're being led by fools. That's why. It's completely immoral world in which we're living in. But still, Krishna's still in control. So therefore, he's made a beautiful place as well. And we can turn this, this demonic hell-like existence into a beautiful spiritual dimension. And that's what we need from a song, every man, woman, and child, to help to turn this world around, into the spiritual dimension. We all have a part to play, It's really simple in the sense is that to imbibe the philosophy, imbibe this understanding of what Krishna is speaking. And then Krishna will give us intelligence then how to live properly here and how to live better here. And that's what the whole Krishna consciousness movement is meant to do. And it's meant to help us individually and collectively, as Prabhupada said there. One can attain perfect peace, all living, including in other words, that it's for all of us individually, but also collectively. If we have that peace in ourselves, we will help others as well, and we will spread that as well. And I just wanted to exemplify what you were saying. Srila Prabhupada, he performed so many austerities. He came over on a boat, freighter ship, 38 days on the sea, through storms, had a couple of heart attacks, to get this message out to people, because he could see that people didn't understand what was going on. The whole Western world basically was going under a complete illusion, I-me-mine illusion, And he just wanted to get this message out because that was the instruction from his spiritual master. His spiritual master asked him to do this. And so that he wanted to give peace to everybody. That's what a great envoy is, an envoy from the spiritual world, or an avatar, Shaktivesh avatar. That's what they do. Christ, Muhammad, so many spiritual, Lord Buddha, so many spiritual entities. That's their goal. That's what they want. They want to help people in this world to understand the eternality of the soul. And they're prepared to undergo huge difficulties. I'm just going to read a little section here from the Prabhupada Lilamrita. And it's about Srila Prabhupada when he was, the title of the chapter is called Crying in the Wilderness. And it was a time when he was in Delhi in the 1950s. And he had just started the whole mission, the whole spiritual mission. And he had no money, but he was trying to publish literature because he wanted to get these books out so that people could hear about the spiritual reality. And this is one person who used to know Prabhupada at the time. It was his printer. Let me see, I hope I'm not at the right spot now. Oh yeah, his name was Kumar Jain. So this is a kind of like a view from a person who just knew Prabhupada in the 50s, but the reason I wanted to speak about this, it's quite entertaining in a sense. So listen to it, but at the end is a very important message as well. This is Kumar Jain. My first impression was that he was a nice person and straightforward. I felt pity also because of the conditions under which he would come. I know he didn't have even 25 paisa. He would come all the way on foot, and without any breakfast or anything. He would come in the morning to the press, and when I would ask him, Swamiji, did you have anything to eat this morning? He would say, oh no, Mr. Jain, I just came because I had to see the proofs. And Mr. Jain, that's all right, I would say, I will get breakfast for you. And I would call for breakfast, and then he would sit and work. He would do the proofreading himself. The printing was done by me, and most of the time he would like to be present when that final printing was done. He would come in the morning around 7 and stay until he had seen all the proofs. It was a regular thing that he would come without breakfast, I would arrange for breakfast, and he would sit across the table, and we would sit across the table from one another for hours together. He was always talking on religious subjects only. But when we would be sitting, especially when waiting for the proofs to come, we would discuss many things. I felt that he knew quite a lot because he was a well-read person. He was more a friend than just a person coming to get things printed. He was a very simple man, straightforward in his habits. But his mission at that time was particularly to further the movement of Back to Godhead magazine. His financial condition was very, very weak. Sometimes the printing would be difficult because he was not able to arrange for the paper. Many times I told him that he was feeling difficulty. Why was he continuing? But he said, no, it is my mission, and I will always carry it on as far as possible. I tried to accommodate him to the maximum possible extent, but he was a real pauper. I only did the printing, and he had to arrange for the paper. So sometimes it was delayed. Although my job was printing, sometimes I would say, all right, you're so keen, I will give you the paper. But usually he would arrange it for himself. Since we only did printing, he would bring it in a rickshaw. We were not uncomfortable together, but as business would have it, if the bills were standing for a long time, then I would ask him if he could do something about it. He would say, don't worry, you can be sure that your money is coming. I never asked him where his funds were coming from because I felt that it was his personal matter. But it was embarrassing for him when he could not pay, so I never tried to embarrass him. He was concerned that if he didn't have money, how could he print the paper? And he definitely wanted to run that paper. He wanted to preach the teachings of the Gita. He thought of it as a sort of movement, that it was the only way that people in the world could find peace. His conviction was very strong. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
I mean, that's the reason why we're sitting here today, was because an elderly gentleman, 60 years old, with no money, wanted to print this peacefulness, and he wanted to give that peace to everybody on earth. That was his mission. And because he kept on and he persisted, and he became stronger and stronger, and then Krishna he opened up everything for him. He gave him the intelligence and the knowledge by which he could do it. So now we're in a kind of slightly better position, in the sense that we're here, we're in the Western world, we're not struggling to do things. All the books have been printed, the message is there. So in our situation, we have to absorb the books, and that's something which Prabhupada was, when he was here, there was one thing that he felt, that we were kind of expert at giving out the books, but we weren't so good at actually studying the books. And one way in which we can study books actually is to do it every day. We can read Bhagavad Gita every day, one chapter, and it takes about 6 to 10 minutes depending on the chapter. Because what that does, you'll find, I can guarantee, you get in touch with an incredible reality of Krishna just by doing that activity. You will enter into a whole different dimension that you've never experienced before, because a lot of you have, but at the same time we're so apt to forget, even from day to day. We have so many resolutions, okay, I'll do this, and then we forget about it and we let it slip. But we shouldn't. If we let it slip, we're wasting time. We're actually wasting valuable time. But if we can actually spend, I mean, if possible, you know, anything from 10 minutes to an hour to 2 hours, depending on your capacity, to absorb yourself in this knowledge, then we will have actual ability. You'll see, you'll start speaking this knowledge, and then you'll hear it again. Not only have you've learned it, but when you speak it, you hear it as well as the other person. And then you'll see that the depth of the knowledge, and then Krishna, who's within our heart, will start to give us more and more knowledge. And that's why I'm saying that it's not an intellectual exercise. We have to use our intelligence and our mind and everything, but it is a process of surrender. God will reveal to us the whole reality of why we're here, and will reveal to us our own natures, our real natures, our eternal natures. Everyone says, I'm trying to find myself. This is how we find ourselves. Seriously, God will tell us who we are, and then we will experience who we are. It's the greatest journey, actually. You know, you couldn't ask for a better journey, and you will get the most sublime peace and understanding, and all these things that we want, all this love, the eternality, blissfulness. It will all be there in that situation. So it really is. It is the best possible thing that we can do. Is everybody convinced?
Yep.
Am I a good salesman? Hands up, who's going to keep reading Bhagavad Gita every day from now on? Okay, you do already. 1, 2, you do already probably as well. 3, 4, 5, yes, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Come on, more. Make a commitment. You're here in front of the deity, in front of Krishna. It will, as I say, let me read a little bit more from Srila Prabhupada. Maybe that will convince more than 10. I'm going to do another count at the end of this, see if we get any more. But it's important to follow through. This 5th chapter is a practical explanation of Krishna consciousness, generally known as karma yoga. The question of mental speculation as to how karma yoga can give liberation is answered herewith. To work in Krishna consciousness is to work with the complete knowledge of the Lord as the predominator. Such work is not different from transcendental knowledge. Direct Krishna consciousness is bhakti yoga, and jnana yoga is a path leading to bhakti. Krishna consciousness means to work in full knowledge of one's relationship with the Supreme Absolute, and the perfection of this consciousness is full knowledge of Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A pure soul is the eternal servant of God, as is fragmental part and parcel. He comes into contact with Maya, or illusion, due to the desire to lord it over Maya, and that is the cause of his many sufferings. As long as he is in contact with matter, he has to execute work in terms of material necessities. Krishna consciousness, however, brings one into spiritual life, even while one is within the jurisdiction of matter. For it is an arousing of spiritual existence by practice in the material world. The more one is advanced, the more he is freed from the clutches of matter. The Lord is not partial toward anyone. Everything depends on one's practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness, which helps one control the senses in every respect and conquer the influence of desire and anger. And one who stands fast in Krishna consciousness, controlling the above-mentioned passions, remains factually in the transcendental stage, or Brahma Nirvana. The Eightfold Yoga mysticism is automatically practiced in Krishna consciousness because the ultimate purpose is served. There is a gradual process of elevation in the practice of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. But these only preface perfection by devotional service, which alone can award peace in the human being. It is the highest perfection of life. Is there any other comments or questions? Okay, again.
So Prabhu, now we know that ego is the main problem.
Ahankar,
So,
yeah.
How
False ego.
to get rid of this thing?
Yeah, and it was answered actually, Prabhupada answers it there. It is it says, Krishna consciousness, however, brings one into spiritual life, even while one is in the jurisdiction of matter. For it is an arousing of spiritual existence by practice in the material world. So there's a huge element of practice in it. A lot of devotees, what we do, I haven't got my beads here, but we chant on beads for 2 hours every day, minimum. Anyone like to do that? Means you have to get up early. You have to get up early, but if you do it, you'll get up early for the rest of your life, because it's like a real battery in your tank, you know. It's like it's an incredible method to actually to live your life. You'll be actually sailing, you know. No matter what happens, happiness and distress, honor or dishonor, fame or infamy, you'll go through it. And so chanting is hugely important. You know, it's like that's why we do this kirtan. You often notice that I actually have to huge compliments to some of the devotees here who put on these festivals, these chanting festivals which we have here, because you know, it actually what it does, it brings people into a whole sense of the eternality. When people are chanting and singing from the bottom of their hearts and calling out to God, it has an incredible effect. You know, all bad things go away at that point, you know. It's just kind of completely removed almost. So the more that we can kind of get ourselves into those situations in spiritual life, and I know that you work, you have your occupation and so on, so often people say, well, what can I do? I have to do this work, I have to do this, I'm doing computer programmer, analytics, I'm doing accountancy, I'm doing I'm looking, I'm a taxi driver, how can I remain Krishna conscious during this time? Well, that's why I say that Prabhupada said it, is that, you know, we have to prepare ourselves by chanting and hearing. Because then we're able to see things in a different perspective. I've noticed that if I get up in the morning and I don't chant, I'm a terrible grump, haven't I, Shannon?
Yeah.
Even at the worst of times, at the best of times, you know, it's like, you know, by chanting, at least you're giving yourself a great chance to be more spiritual for the whole of your day, because you're contacting the spiritual energy. Did you get that? Do you know what I mean? You're contacting the spiritual energy. You're off the mundane material platform. Do you know what I mean? You know, because the matter is always can drag us down a lot into I've got a pain in my neck, I've got a pain in my spine, my you know, or mentally, you know, the mental platform, you know. Oh, did she say that to me, or did he do this? You completely neglected me. You didn't even look at me that time. You know, you get into a whole mental area. But if you take to spiritual life, then that all goes. You know, you start to kind of remove it. Like it starts to go away bit by bit. You know, as I'm sure you have experienced yourself. You know, it's a kind of like a clearing. All those things which seem to be so important in this material world become less and less important. And the things which are really important, we take heed of, you know. So that's basically it. By the practices, it's like a practice, and then it becomes. What happens when you practice something for a long time? Anyone tell me?
It becomes a habit.
A habit, yes, very good, yes. And then it also becomes
Habit, and after lifestyle, and after
lifestyle, very good, yes. And it becomes spontaneous then, you know. You don't even have to think about it. And then you're actually on a spiritual roll, you know. And even if you have some fall down, and this can happen in spiritual life, you know, you can kind of get hit by something and you kind of lose your rhythm or whatever. but you just get back right again. You just get right back again. And that's the beauty of having a habit of practice in the morning time. You just go back to your practice. Okay, I was an idiot, I was an ass, you know, but I got back in there, and then I start again. And then there's so many verses in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, don't worry, you know, I'll look after you, you know, I will protect you, don't fear. So Krishna, once you make those moves towards Krishna, Krishna makes 100 steps towards you, you know, 1 step to Krishna, 100 steps back. So Krishna's kind of helping us. God is helping us all along the way. We may not think it sometimes. We may think, God, why did you do that to me? Why did you do that? You know, I'm a devotee. Why did you make me suffer like that? No, it's because he wants you to come back more. So he's giving you a little touch, you know, a little taste of what the material is worth, so you don't get too attached to being here, because it's not a great place, you know. And then okay, got it, and you keep on going, you know, to the spiritual. So just any other question, by the way? I just one other quick question. Where was this book written, Bhagavad Gita?
What do you mean, battle, Kurukshetra?
Yeah, it was written in a battlefield.
Yeah.
And what was happening? You know, tell me what's going to happen next. You know, like we were talking about peace here, right?
Yeah.
And then also we're
Yeah.
it's a war.
Yeah.
Between Pandavas and
Yeah.
Arjuna is supposed to fight with his relatives.
Yes.
But he doesn't want it. He said, why he.
Yeah, but my question is that, so here's me pontificating away from Bhagavad Gita about peace, and yet Krishna is speaking about war. How do you round that square?
He's giving the intelligence to the Arjuna about that.
Yeah, but still in war, isn't it? I mean, and he's talking about peace.
He's making ultimate peace.
You resonate.
Resonate.
So he is talking that everyone has their own destiny and everyone has their own karma which they have to do.
That doesn't.
So it was about that he needs to do war because that's what he's.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that Krishna the whole class was about peace and how we can achieve peace on earth, and yet, you know, here's Krishna is talking about a war.
It's because everyone's life is like a war and miseries. So how to make it peaceful, more peaceful. So Krishna is telling it to Arjuna, but we have to keep ourselves in the place of Arjuna and think what Krishna is saying, and we have to follow it.
That's a pretty good answer, I have to say. Yeah, very good. And there's also the reality, though. This was actually an intergalactic war. It's quite a powerful situation that was happening on the whole planetary system, and actually it wasn't just on this planet. It was, and this is something I think we have to understand. It's if you read about the chapters coming up later, there's one chapter specifically which addresses that. Can anyone tell me what that chapter is? It's called the divine
Nature.
the divine and the demoniac nature.
7?
It's chapter 16. I'll just read to you. Krishna says to Arjuna, this is quite interesting because, you know, it's something that we also have to address as well. I won't take too long here because it's Krishna first of all, verses 1 to 3 talks about divine qualities: fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger. These are all the qualities he talks about. He said, O son of Bharata, these belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So they're the ones we're after. But then he also goes on, this whole chapter explains about the demoniac nature. Now, demonic pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness and ignorance. These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, O son of Krita. The transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, whereas the demoniac qualities make for bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with divine qualities. O son of Prita, in this world there are two kinds of created beings. One is called the divine and the other demoniac. I've already explained to you at length the divine qualities. Now hear from me of the demoniac. Those who are demoniac do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them. They say that this world is unreal with no foundation, no God in control. They say it is produced of sex desire and has no cause other than lust. Following such conclusions, the demoniac who are lost to themselves and who have no intelligence engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Engaging in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. Okay? Taking shelter of insatiable lust. So is that ring a bell to anybody there as well? Lust means wanting this, I want this, I want this. And absorbed in the conceit of pride and false prestige. The demoniac, thus illusioned, are always sworn to unclean work, attracted by the impermanent. They believe that to gratify the senses is the prime necessity of human civilization. That's why you need a 76,000 square foot house. Thus, until the end of their life, their anxiety is immeasurable. Bound by a network of hundreds and thousands of desires and absorbed in lust and anger. So this is also in this, and on that point as well, that is also within us as well. Do you know? This lust and anger is in us as well. Let's not beat about the bush. It's there. That's why we're here. This lust and anger is there. We have to learn how to get rid of it, you know, or else to utilize it properly. But anyway, they believe that to gratify the senses is the prime necessity of human civilization. Thus, until the end of life, their anxiety is immeasurable. Bound by a network of hundreds and thousands of desires and absorbed in lust and anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. Anybody see that in society today? People securing money by illegal means? It's all over the place. Absolutely. The demoniac person thinks, now listen to this, the thinking of the demonic person. So much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. Does that sound like an egomaniac by any chance? This is the problem when ego gets diseased. You know, we talked about false ego earlier. This subtly is in us as well, to a certain degree, to small, but this is what the chanting does. It uproots this from the heart, this type of demoniac thinking and mentality. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices, I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. Anyway, there are some of the descriptions. So that's another aspect of trying to be peaceful in this world in a situation which is pretty much controlled by people of demoniac natures. So it's an uphill battle, you know. We first of all have to make that, as you were saying, Prabhu, we've got to make that change in ourselves internally, you know, to accept our dependence on God. And then we can do whatever we can to create a situation, a peaceful situation, so that people can experience this peace and then go onwards and help in this message. So the Hare Krishna movement is in Dublin. This is what we've been trying to do. We have these meetings. We have this kirtan every Tuesday night. We have readings from Bhagavatam. We have our restaurant closed at the moment, but we are opening again in mid-February. We're distributing prasadam to people. So, and we're trying to present this lifestyle so that number one is that individually everybody can benefit, and then collectively we will be able to set up an atmosphere where that people can take shelter in this very difficult age of Kali. It's called the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. Can you imagine? We're trying to be peaceful in an age of quarrel, but this is the age in which we're living. And so together, collectively, we can really move mountains. There's no doubt about it. We can actually create, even in Dublin itself, in Ireland itself, we can create a whole movement whereby people can actually take shelter of spiritual life. Hare Krishna, and thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki. Hare Krishna. So now, for the next part of the program, we're going to have an arty, and